to The Plain Truth, a show where we try to get into some of the mysteries, anomalies, and the dirty underbelly of the world around us. I'm your host, Plain, and joining us this week, we have Olof Dammegard, who is originally from Sweden and living in Europe, and has worked and researched on conspiracies for quite a long time. Olof, are you there?
I sure am.
Well, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. And joining us for our little chat is my friend Jerry. Jerry, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, guys.
Okay, well, appreciate it. So, Olof, let's get going. You can really shed a lot of light on how so many conspiracies in the world, at least in the Western world, are related. I've looked into your work over the years, and it's really quite interesting. Could you tell us a little bit about some of how you got into this? I mean, how did you start?
I think actually it began when I was a kid, when I grew up in Denmark, and a big part of my family, my grandfather was in jail for helping the Jews during the Second World War. My dad was in the resistance movement. My grandmother's sister was helping to smuggle arms in baby cots and so on. And so I grew up with all these stories about how the importance of standing up for what is right and true, even though you might be under the oppression of an enemy that looks invincible. You still have to stand up for the truth, which can sometimes be very scary. But I grew up with all these stories about the importance. And then after I grew up, I started working as a journalist. And in the early 1980s, I started becoming extremely interested in the JFK assassination, after having seen one of the first documentaries that showed the so-called Zapruder film, where it's very clear that the JFK assassination was committed by at least two shooters, and most probably a lot more than that. And from that day on, I started on a quest, almost trying to find out what was actually going on, not the official version that we were being pumped with through media, but what actually happened. And this has taken me on a 30-year quest almost on revealing the truth, because what I found is that so many of these major so-called conspiracies are actually connected. It's the same power elite that I've been able to track down, like many other researchers as well, finding out that it's the same power elite that are behind many, if not all, of these major conspiracies, and that they've actually also used the exact same mechanics over the years, so that people that were taking part of the JFK assassination in 1963 in Dallas was actually also part in the hit on the Swedish Prime Minister in 1986, some 25 years later. And they were also involved in 9/11. They were involved in Oklahoma City. They were part of taking out Salvador Allende in 1973 in Chile. They were part of killing Che Guevara in Bolivia. They killed Pablo Neruda in Chile as well. They killed Robert Smith in South Africa and so on. So it's been the same team of assassins that has been used on a global scale. They've been just flying in and out of countries and using the same little team to take care of business. And so this is one of the things that I put a major part of my life into revealing. And up until a year ago or a year and a half ago, no one had heard of me, because I'd chosen to take the sort of under the radar path, because I think there's only two paths you can take, or at least before the internet came along. It was either you needed to get the spotlight big time on you, so that you could, if something happened to you, then that would confirm what you had been saying. And they always try to avoid creating martyrs or getting the truth out there. So, and the other option was go totally anonymous and go under the sort of like stealth under the radar. And since at that time I was more or less Mr. Nobody, I chose that one. And so for many, many years, I looked into these assassinations, and especially the one in Sweden as well, the killing of Olof Palme, which is like most of all of these assassinations, it's the same old story where it's blamed on a lone crazy guy, but where the actual truth is that it was a massive conspiracy carried out with military precision, and where the government, both the local and on a global scale as well, was involved in carrying it out and covering it up. And so this has been, like I say, up until a year ago, I kept this very low profile. And then I came to a point where I had so much truth that was only on my shoulders, and I felt very vulnerable and quite scared at that time, because I needed it to get out there, and I tried to get my book published over the years, but I could never get it. And then in the end, I just decided to set up like a network and then put it out on the internet for free. So within a few hours, I prepared everyone and said, please, when I send this book out, please just pump it out all over the place. Maybe I didn't mention that I wrote a book called Coup d'etat in slow motion, which is about the assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister. It's almost 1,000 pages with extreme details of all the people involved, names, photos, maps, documents, you name it, the whole conspiracy, how it was carried out, by whom, and so on, but also with the extreme links to other assassinations and other major conspiracies. So that was the book that I pumped out there. So within a few hours, it was just all over the world. And from then on, suddenly that created like a tidal wave of interest from especially radio stations. And so for the last year or 15 months, I don't know how many radio shows I've been on. So this is what I'm up to today. I think my website, which is called lightonconspiracies.com, just passed 72,000 hits. So it's like there's an amazing awakening going on at the moment. People are so ready to hear about these things.
Well, thank you. Well, I agree with that. There's a huge awakening going on, and in that sense, you picked the perfect time to let this out. And in your website, you also have a lot of interviews. So listeners, if you want to get into some of the details, there's just so much. And again, it's not all about Palme. It's about all kinds of things that you've been working on. So it's fascinating. And so in some sense, I'd say you were just born to do this,
I tell you, Paul, Plain, I feel the same. It's like my purpose coming here was to do this, one of the things, because during these years, I mean, it's put myself in a very dangerous situation for years, because the only thing this global elite fears is that the truth, the real truth, comes out there. That's the only thing they're afraid of. So anyone who keeps pushing and pushing and pushing will be dealt with. And they have a very violent way of dealing with these type of people like myself. In the old days, before the internet, it was a lot easier to get rid of us because car accidents, suicides, being found drowned in your own bathtub, fully dressed, or shooting yourself in the back with a shotgun and then stabbing yourself several times, committing suicide like that. That was you. Once you start looking into these conspiracies, there's so many of these strange deaths around them. And I lost 2 friends in Sweden who died very mysteriously. And also I decided to leave Sweden the year 2000 because it was just getting too close. I had a visit in my apartment. It was very scary. So I just said, listen, I don't intend to become a part of the statistics of a strange death, so I'm out of here. So that's why we emigrated, and that's where also here in Spain where I finished the book and so on. So I'm very happy that we did that move.
Do you think it's safer being in Spain?
I think it's a lot safer now with the internet. I mean, you can't compare the difference, because now information can spread so fast and to so many different sources at the same time. It was in the old days, I mean, I'm talking like 15, 20 years ago, if you were the only one knowing something, then they just needed to stop you, boom, that's it, or get hold of whatever copies you had hidden or whatever. But now it's just, I mean, it's a matter of a minute and it just goes out there. So they were part of creating the internet, but this is sort of like a sword that is hitting back. It's a two-edged sword. So I think nowadays the marriage between YouTube, cell phones, and the internet, this is just incredible. The freedom tool of or weapon of freedom that has been created with this combination is just amazing.
Yes, so it is. Well, I tell you what, why don't we get into the story about Olof Palme, because this is an important one, and a lot of listeners are just not going to remember. They're just going to think he was this Swedish politician, and so what's the big deal? So I guess we might start out, if you could say a little bit about him and kind of answer, why would the powers that be want to get rid of him?
I can tell you, when you said about that most of my interviews is about Olof Palme, that is not correct. My research has been, it started around Palme. My book is evolving around the Palme assassination as well. But almost all of the interviews I've been given is about the JFK assassination and this team of assassins that they've been using from the late 1950s and all the way up until today, taking care of, I mean, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hits and different operations they've been involved in. So this is my main area where I've been interviewed. Also, when it comes to different assassinations on musicians and so on, because these people have been involved with that as well. So this is normally where I circle in this area, because just like you say, Olof Palme is a name that is not very known nowadays. He was killed in February 1986, and in other countries than the Scandinavian and European countries, his name has faded out in the horizon. So, but I'll be happy to talk about that assassination as well if you want to.
Well, I think it's worth starting with that, and then we can move on. I mean, just correct me, but I was under the impression that he was kind of had this image of a third way between the Soviets and Americans, kind of that peaceful approach, and the social democracy in Northern Europe and all that. And so he kind of seemed like he wasn't, I don't know how to put it, but he wasn't that important to, let's say, Cold Warrior thinkers. He just seemed like he was there and there was nothing special about him. But obviously there was something special about him, or special about the situation.
The thing is that the description you gave now, not correct. He was an extremely important politician internationally, because he came from a small country, but he acted like a real pain in the butt for the big nations, like especially the United States. And also what he was doing, he was taking the, how should I say, he was taking care of the small countries like Cuba, Palestine, Nicaragua, these things. So he was almost like a Robin Hood, going in there defending the weak ones from the big bully in the West type of thing. That was the official version, because he was a multi-faced politician. That was the picture we had. We were being brought up with him being the fearless, incredible person who was the only one in the West who dared to stand up against the States when it came to the Vietnam War. He started all of these different big things. He wanted to that Northern Europe would be a nuclear-free zone and so on. Many people think that this is the reason why he was killed. The real truth is that behind the scene, he was actually part of this global elite. He was a Bilderberger. He was also a member of the Committee of 300. I'm not sure if your listeners are aware of these groups, but I can go into more details about them. And he was so he was working on the outside. He was working for the weak, but in the background, he was working for these big financial powers, major powers. So he was the hit on him is extremely complex, just like the JFK assassination. They are extremely multi-layered and very, very complex. So if anyone is especially interested in the Palme assassination, I made a four-part of 2 hours each on Red Eyes Creations, only about the Olof Palme assassination, because it's such an intricate thing. So it's not easy to just go into and just talk about it generally, because once you start getting into it, it's extremely complex, like I said, and it's got connections globally. It's got connected to illegal arms trading on a global scale. It's connected to the Iran-Contra scandal. It's connected to South Africa. It's connected to many of these different areas, India as well, and so on. So it's, like I say, not easy to just go over in a few minutes.
Well, actually, I know that. And by the way, I'm one of those cynical types that my view is of him is more like what you described. I considered he was an actor pretending to be in favor of Palestine or small countries or something. I figured he was an agent for the Bilderberg types. And that's probably, and that's what seems to be the case, but it still raises the question as to why they would get rid of him and what the teams were. Can you just briefly say, do you think that he just got out of line? What do you think he was becoming a wild card? What?
This is the thing. Most of the time when they carry out these assassinations on such a high level as a prime minister, it's because it's somebody on their own team that they cannot trust anymore, that's become too big-headed, or he's just getting out of control totally, or it's one person who's proved to be an enemy of their own. And with him, very, very difficult to know what actually happened. I have my extreme theory that, like I say, it wouldn't be good if I just went into that one, because it would sound like I was totally off my bonkers to say a thing like that. But the official version is that he became a major threat to NATO, to the international illegal arms trading. Also they were afraid of that he was going soft on Soviet Union, that he was planning a trip to the Soviet Union, and that he would sort of betray Sweden. So NATO forces and also in the States, Bush Senior and company with a P2 lodge in Italy and so on, planned to carry out this assassination, and it was done. The order for the hit was sent to South African boss, the secret police down there, and a colonel there by the name of Craig Williamson was the one that was given the order to take him out. Not that it was South Africa who ordered the hit, but part of the team came from that. And then during the months before the assassination itself, there were surveillance teams flown in that was covering all his where he was going, his normal habits, where he was working, living, all of these things. Also, they checked out exactly where a good hit could be carried out, where the escape cars, there were multiple escape cars involved, where alternate shooters could be positioned and so on. And then once that was taken out, while they were preparing a patsy as well, I can go into more of these things a bit later, because this team has been following almost like a template, a bullet point template on how to carry out these assassinations on a high level and how to get away with them. It's almost like.
Well, why don't we just move into the team?
Yeah.
And how what you found out about them, who might be in it, that kind of thing.
Okay. The team, like I said, it's after I looked into so many different of these conspiracies. I started with the JFK I spent like thousands and thousands and thousands of hours with that. Then I became more and more interested in the Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King. Then Olof Palme was killed and so on. So it was only by looking so deeply into so many different ones that I started seeing that there was a very clear pattern. And after a while, I even started seeing the same people popping up as well. Had I not looked into the other assassination, I would not noticed. But now, since I had, that's why I started reacting, and also why I started becoming aware of this. And you're asking about the team. The team that I found out is a group called Operation 40. It was a team that was created in the late 1950s and early 1960s under it was the American president at the time, Dwight Eisenhower, who gave the task to his vice president, Richard Nixon, to form a team of highly skilled assassins that they could use under the surveillance of the CIA to be used as sort of like a hidden secret gun to take care of foreign leaders or whoever it was that they had problems with, that a team that could just be sent wherever and assassinate whoever they wanted. So this group mostly consisted of exiled Cubans that had left Cuba after Castro had taken over. And they were, to start with, they were between 40 and some 85 different assassins. Most of them were former mercenaries, military people, police officers, from the Air Force as well. And then they were put under, like I said, guidance by some very skilled CIA people. There were people like Ted Shackley, who was later extremely high up in the CIA. There were David Atlee Phillips, extremely high up in the CIA. He ended up at the chief of Black Operation for the Western Hemisphere. I mean, we're talking the big players here now. There were people like E. Howard Hunt, who was deeply involved in the JFK assassination, also in the Watergate burglary. The Watergate burglary was actually there to cover up and try and get rid of evidence that pointed out their involvement, the Operation 40 and Richard Nixon's involvement in the JFK assassination. Anyway, so this group was trained, and what they wanted to, they prepared this group to kill Castro. In the beginning, that was the aim, to get rid of the beard, who had taken over Cuba and thrown out the mob, and a lot, I mean, we're talking multi-million dollars that was just seized, taking over, and all the American and international interest was just kicked out of from this island. So that was the guy they wanted to start with. But then they started having this problem with JFK, who, after the Bay of Pigs invasion, started, like we talked about before, becoming sort of somebody they couldn't trust anymore. Up until then, he had been the power, sort of the global elite, and also connection with the mob. They could control him more or less in the way they wanted. But after the Bay of Pigs invasion and the Cuban Missile Crisis, that was when something happened, that it was almost like he had an enlightened experience when he was almost there with a finger on the button, where he could have been the one that would have started the Third World War, a nuclear war, but where he refused. And after that, he started doing very, very drastic changes. He wanted to crush the CIA into 1,000 pieces. He wanted to withdraw out of Vietnam, the war hadn't even really started for the American part. He wanted to get rid of the Federal Reserve Bank, which is an extremely criminal, not even federal organization, but a cartel of private bankers who are in super control of the currency in the States and also globally. So he wanted out of that, just like Abraham Lincoln. That was one of the reasons he was killed. And there are many different reasons why they killed JFK. But anyway, when they decided to hit JFK, what they did was they just turned this cannon called Operation 40. They just turned the whole thing against Kennedy. And when you study in great detail Dealey Plaza, where he was shot, many of the shooters involved, I can go into great details and name more or less all of them, were part of Operation 40. And many of the people and the surroundings around Dealey Plaza as well was connected to Dealey Plaza. No, to Operation 40, sorry. But one of the people also that I didn't mention was that the person that was put in charge of financing it to funnel the funds from the the military industrial complex, the oil tycoons in Texas, and also other from funds from the global elite and so on, that was pumped into the creation of this group. The man put in charge of that was a man by the name of George W. Herbert Walker Bush. That's George Bush Sr. This George Bush Sr., he has, if you check out him, during the history, he's there in every single one of these major hits when it comes to political assassinations or terror acts as well. He's a very, very central figure. The whole Bush family is like extremely central in all of this. Anyway, after they killed JFK, they moved on. They were part of the Robert Kennedy assassination. There was one of the CIA people called David Morales. He was in Dealey Plaza when they killed JFK. He was also at the Ambassador Hotel when they took him out. The team was a lot smaller when they took out Robert Kennedy, but same people, just moved it around. And they were also, like I said before, when George Bush Sr. gave the order to track down Che Guevara, who was a partner of Fidel Castro. They put together a team that should track him down, and they managed to find him in Bolivia. And the guy that was given the order to actually assassinate him was the same David Morales that was both when JFK was killed, Robert Kennedy was killed, and also Che Guevara. And these people, like this Operation 40, they're so central in what is called, when they took over in Chile, but also the whole thing that turned into the Iran-Contra scandal and so on. They're so central in these cases.
So do you think of them as mechanics? Are these basically just like mafia hitmen kind of guys?
Yeah, the skilled assassins. Nothing else. When it came to JFK, they hated him. They hated his guts because they blamed him for the failure of the Bay of Pigs invasion. They was waiting for air cover, and it's said that JFK was the one who withheld the air cover at the last minute, which resulted in that. Hundreds of these people were killed and taken as prisoners and tortured and so on. So they never forgave him for that one, even though now there's quite a lot of proof saying that it was actually not JFK that did that. But after that, they really hated his guts and they wanted him dead, that's for sure. But when it comes to the other hits, they've just been used as mechanics, like you say. No personal involvement. It's very compartmentalized as well. So people only know their very little part. They have no idea about the whole picture. They don't know who's behind it. They don't know who's paying or anything like that. They're just being sent and given the task to perform this and this and this. And I heard an interview with one of these people, and they were asked, but how come it's like, why do you use the same people again and again? And he said, why change a winning team? They're winning, so why change them? They're doing a great job.
Well, they seem to be winning. I'm not sure about the rest of us, but they do seem to be awfully good at it. On the other hand, I think it's going to be hard to protect a politician. I mean, how could you protect somebody like Palme? I mean, these guys, some of them are awfully exposed with today's weapons,
Yeah, true.
I mean, I think, though, that I think in some senses the bigger question might be The not so much the hitmen, but the setup. Who can arrange a lone gunman to be the patsy, right? That kind of thing is in a sense more interesting because how do you get away with it?
This is the whole thing, because when you look at JFK or any of these big ones, there's always the question, there's always these theories, yeah, but did this lone gunman do it, or did this guy do it, or did the mob do it on their own, or was it the KGB or something? You have to look, just like you say, who has got the power to cover it up? Because it's not only that you need to carry out the assassination, you need all the power to control media, to control the investigation, to control evidence, and to cover the whole thing up. Who can do that? And that's when it starts coming back and pointing towards the same elite again and again and again. Because once you start climbing up, the higher up you get in the power pyramid, trying to track what actually happened, for one thing, the more difficult it becomes to follow the trails, but also that in the end you will see that is the only point from where it could be controlled from, because this is not easy to do a thing like that. But if you want to, I can just go into one of these templates, how they look. I've got like one template for an assassination. I've got another one for when they carry out these like a bomb thing, like Oklahoma City or 7/7 or this.
Well, sure. Let's hear a template. How about the assassination template?
Because these templates are really important, because once you start seeing how they're carried out, then you will also see the next so-called mass shooting or whatever it is, you will start seeing the exact same bullet point. So this is why I think it's important to expose that. So, okay, let's say we start with an assassination, okay, first. Like I say, normally the guy that is targeted is either someone of their own, somebody they want to get rid of for some reason. He's become too big-headed or unreliable, or starting to go his own way, or starting to become a threat, like they're fearful of him becoming a whistleblower or so on. So if, for instance, let's say that it's a prime minister or something like that who is targeted, what happens, what I will describe now is, since the technology has sort of evolved so much lately, the last 10, 15 years, it's become so digital. I will go back to the way it used to be, like 10, 15 years ago or something like that. Anyway, so what they do is there's a surveillance team sent in to cover him, to find out exactly all his habits, all the routes he has coming, going to work, all his schedules and so on. So this surveillance team used to be, or maybe still is, normally normally it's like 9 people, 3 different teams, 3 different people in each. They're only connected with radio, so that most of the time they don't even know each other. They know each other by code name. They don't know each other's background. It's very compartmentalized. That is one of the key thing, that it should be chopped up on a need-to-know chain, so that if somebody starts to or decides to talk or to reveal or try to expose what is going on, he will only know his very little part of the whole thing. Anyway, so what they're doing is that they're finding out everything about the victim to become. At the same time, they check out the area, so that all the different streets, like for the escape cars, where should they be positioned, how many shooters, should there be alternative shooters, because most of the time it's a triangular fire. It looks like it's the work of one lone crazy guy, but most of the time they're triangular fire, so that they have option 1, 2, 3 should anything go wrong. They check out the area for dead-end streets, for train crossings, for when are the when are the what do you call it, traffic jams, or all of these things, so that it's very important that the operation should go as smoothly as possible. So that is checked out at the same time. And then while this surveillance thing is done, also what you do is you go in and you start creating a patsy, somebody that you can who can take the fall for this thing. And often they sometimes they look at the victim to become, and they see what enemies has he got, and what kind of areas, what trouble areas, and so on has he been involved in, and they start creating false trails, pointing at different directions at his enemies or different so-called terror groups and so on, making it the whole thing is to make it look really confusing in the start, pointing everywhere. But with the patsy, they use somebody that needs to look good in media. He needs to look weird or crazy or strange. He needs to have either mentally weak or a criminal background or a drug addict or someone like that, where it's very good if he looks weird in media, like he looks threatening, or he says threatening things, or something like that. It used to be like in the early 60s and 70s during the Cold War, the boogeyman the ones they pointed at were Soviet Union, people from the Soviet Union or East Germany or so on. Then after the Cold War stopped, the boogeyman, they changed the boogeyman trend into the Muslims, because the Muslims were super good for this thing to be blamed. They look really, you can really make them look strange. Big brown eyebrows, big mustache. They come from a country you have absolutely no idea where that is, and they have a name like Mustafa, Abdullah, Karim, Karum. Super good for when it comes to the boogeyman. Just pump it into through media, and people, after a long time of this type of pumping, which we've been exposed to, most people nowadays, if you say Muslim equals terrorist or Islam equals terrorism, which is absolutely not true at all. But we've been so pumped with this over the years, with all of these different terror acts and so on, or I would say so-called terror acts and so on. And nowadays they even moved it, so it's not, they've started leaving the Muslim one, so now it's going into that the boogeyman will look like anyone, blonde, blue-eyed, he was a peacemaker, or he was a yoga teacher, or he was a next-door neighbor, flower arranger or something like that, making people even more afraid that, the boogeyman can just be anyone, so we need even more protection. So anyway, so the boogeyman or the patsy is prepared. What they do is they prepared evidence, fake evidence, so that as soon as the shots are fired and the person who is targeted is dead, they move in and straight away they start pointing at this patsy. So like I said, evidence is prepared for him. We got the surveillance team, they're doing their job. Patsy is being prepared. Also, at the same time, what you do is that you prepared your own investigation, so that when the person is killed, as soon as that is done, your own investigation with people that you can control moves in, and it kicks out all normal, honest, decent detectives and police officers and so on. They're just pushed to the side, and in goes this investigation. The only task this investigation has is to cover it up, to point in all different directions, saying they went that away, that away, that away, and keep repeating the patsy's name. It was the patsy, it was the patsy, it was the patsy. That is the task of this one.
Have you looked into the Anders Breivik shooting and bombing at all, Ole? And what do you make of that? I mean, do you think this same group was backing him?
Which one?
Anders Breivik?
In Norway. In Norway, where
yes. I'm sorry. We say Breivik.
I'm
sorry about that's why I didn't get it. Yes, for sure. It's major, that one. That is super not what it's said to be. It's black up big time this Norwegian thing. But this is what I'm saying. Once you start getting into this template, you will see that it will fit more or less all of them. Anyway, so the investigation is prepared, evidence is being prepared, the surveillance is on the way, everything. So once we start getting closer to the hit itself, the surveillance team is flown out and the hit team is flown in. This hit team often consists of people from different countries, different groups. We're talking right-wing mercenaries, very skilled killers, sometimes taken from the Stay Behind network or other teams like Operation 40 and so on. They're flown in and they help, they get local backup. This is normally done by local right-wing policemen, security officers, former military people, and so on. And what they do is they help this hit team with all types of logistics, the weapons, ammo, housing, food, cars, all of this. And they keep moving them around from different safe houses so that there will never be a problem with the neighbors starting to notice anything different. The local backup will also make sure that all the weapons, the calibration of the sights and everything that is perfect so that that is working smoothly as well. So then we get close to the hit, and nowadays they've started not so much when it comes to the assassination, but when it comes to the major events like bombs and so on, they do a drill at the same time. And this drill will be the exact same event that is about to happen, but they do it as a drill. And then halfway through, the drill suddenly goes live. And people who are involved in the drill have absolutely no idea that suddenly they're involved in something that is actually happening. And one of the reasons I think they do this is to get the patsy in position and get, if they need explosive or other vehicles or so in position, they will do that through the drill. But this drill will be more involved in the next template I'm going into, so I'll just go back to this one. So we're getting close to the time for the hit, and what happens then is that the hit team, everything is prepared. The multiple shooters in position, multiple backup cars or escape cars. You also, one of the standard items in this is that there will be police cars or people in uniform, but these people are part of the assassination. They're there to stop if somebody normal, starts chasing one of the people involved or start like a car chase or something like that. These police cars and so are there to stop normal people from interfering. Anyway, so we get close to the time and boom, he's shot. So what happens then is in normal day life, if somebody does something really stupid, like take a bottle and throw it into a shop window or something like that, within 2 minutes, the cops will be there and take you. But when it comes to these big hits, you will see that there's like a delay right when it happens. The delay of people are calling in, trying to phone 911 or whatever it is. And there will be a delay from when that happens until the alert goes out. And often the alert only goes out to very central parts of, if it's a city, it will only go out to a very central part so that the rest of the country or the rest of the big city will have absolutely no idea that this thing has happened until like 10, 15 minutes down the road. And the reason for this is that the people involved, the assassins, they need to be able to get away. So there's a delay, everybody gets away, and then boom, in comes, and they make like an iron chain around the whole area, starting a massive search, but in all the wrong places until the hit teams are out of the place. Then at the same time, we have the media. You go in with your own investigation. Their first task is to talk to media, and they would go in and say, oh my God, it's so awful that all of this has happened. My God, my God, my God. But it's the patsy, it's the patsy, it's the patsy. The patsy comes out very quickly most of the time. You will hear them like within minutes, it's the patsy, it's the patsy, it's the patsy. And at this, then after that, while they're occupied with the media, there's a technical team that goes in and corners off the murder site. And what it looks like is that they're looking for proof, but what they're actually doing, they're cleaning the site and placing evidence that will point towards the patsy. So the real hit team gets out of the way, and the patsy is totally blamed. Media is on; they just buy it right away if they're not actually controlled in that direction. And the evidence, like I say, will very soon start pointing directly to this guy, whoever it is. But these patsy people are totally innocent. They have absolutely nothing to do with the whole thing. And then after that, what they're aiming for, the reason why they want a lone crazy guy is because if he's alone, there was no need for a plan. There was no need for a motive. He was alone and he was crazy. So he just walked up and shot the guy. Why? I don't know. He was crazy. Okay. So most of the time they get the patsy and he's just thrown into jail. He doesn't get a chance to really say anything. And the whole idea is to shut the case down as soon as possible. Just throw him into jail, let him rot, and case closed. Boom.
So Ulla, a question here. Don't they sometimes fail in the sense that they don't necessarily get the result they want? Like in the Boston bombing, it looked like they were originally trying to blame it on, conservative, right-wing, gun owner types or whatever. And then they seemed to have this period of confusion with different explanations in different legal settings. And then all of a sudden it seemed like they changed again and they went to these Tsarnaev brothers.
I tell you, I think you're very right there when you say that they fail sometimes, especially nowadays. I feel that in the old days, there was, when one of these operations was taking place, they had a good budget, lots of time to plan it, good skilled people to carry them out. But lately, the last few 5-6 years or whatever, it's like they've speeded the whole thing up and it's becoming so sloppy, really, really sloppy and very so the details that has gone wrong have just multiplied a lot. I would say nowadays these so-called mass shootings they're extremely sloppy. So and
okay,
they don't.
Since we're getting to the mass shootings, it's probably worth asking your view on this, and that is, a lot of us see many of these events as being different from, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago, in that they now seem to be, a lot of them are just Hollywood theater. They're not actually always killing people, or at least they may kill one or two, but they claim they've killed 20 kind of thing. We see these crisis actors. We see questionable videos now that I think I heard an interview of you where you were talking about the Woolwich beheading or supposed beheading.
Yeah.
And it looks like some of these aren't even happening. What have you seen this change? Do you agree with what I'm saying here?
Yeah, for sure. It was. I think it was after 9/11. That was where the big change came. I think up until then, these things were actually happening. They were when there was a shooting, there was an actual shooting. But I think after 9/11, they started having such problems with all of the relatives of victims. Like if you kill somebody's child, and you get this mother after you, she will not back off. She will continue till the day she dies, trying to find out what happened to her son or daughter or whatever it is. And so if you continuously do acts like this where people are being killed, this group of people that will just breathe down your neck will just get bigger and bigger, and you will start having a massive problem with them. They started killing these parents as well. There's quite a few mothers and so on that have died in strange ways. But I think that was where they came to a point where they just said, let's do the same thing, but with actors. And they've done it so sloppily that they even use the same actors in these different things. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely, once you start looking into it and starting to see what's going on, it's almost laughable because it's so badly done.
Well, that raises the question, do they want to do it badly on purpose, do you think?
No, absolutely not. But it's just
Okay.
that most of us are so asleep, and with our heads surrounded with concrete. I don't understand how, but so they don't have to do such a great job, because people still buy it.
Well,
So
I,
this,
I agree with you, but I just think I just have a feeling there's a little bit more to it in the sense that there are some ritualistic angles. There's the mind control trauma of essentially, I don't know how to say it, but putting something in somebody's face and then beating them and saying you have to agree it's something else. In other words, it's kind of like we're all MK Ultra victims now. Um, they're hitting on us in so many ways
yeah,
uh, that I think there's that. I think there's that angle. I mean, I'm not saying it's the only angle, but when you look at look at Sandy Hook, it's possible that I don't know if a few kids were killed or not or what happened, but the whole thing looks like kind of a black magic ritual as much as anything to me. Um, but be that as it may, clearly they're getting sloppy. But I think maybe that the dumbing down and basically the destruction that they've done in the Western world is affecting their own guys too. You know, um,
Mm,
I don't I don't think they're as sharp as they used to be. I look at Brzezinski and then look at the younger guys working for them, and I just think they're a whole level of quality lower or something.
yeah, I think you're right. But I also think there's a shift of generations, just like you say. Many of these people who have been carrying out operations like this very skillfully, they're old guys now, and there are new people coming up. And I, since I don't know this from the inside, I just see that the quality of the work, if you want to call it that, has gone down a lot. And but I also think at the same time the awakening of people has it's on a massive scale now where people are starting to be aware of these things and are really sort of checking all the different angles, checking all the different evidence. They're not buying into it like they used to do. They were so easy in the old days to just do a thing like this and nobody would discover anything. Now you got like within minutes people are there trying to check out, filming with their mobile cameras, checking every single thing on YouTube and so on. So I
Okay,
don't know if it,
Ula, I got a question for you. You live in
yeah,
Spain now, and there was a Madrid train bombing.
yeah,
What is the view of the Spanish public about that? Does that seem to fit your template of a terror, a fake terror attack?
totally, totally.
And
The
how
thing
does
is
the
that
public see it?
they totally buy it. They totally buy it. I haven't heard anything about critical about it here in Spain at all. But it's a very, once you look into it and you start seeing how it's carried out, you will see here as well. It was a black operation, high quality, just boom, 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 boom. And the reason there was just before, it was 2 days before the election, when it came to around getting into the euro and getting into the European, there were different treaties going on at the time, and they were trying to force Spain into not. They couldn't do it logically, because they saw that they were losing power. So what they did was they tried through these Madrid bombings to get people to vote, but emotionally. They did the same in Sweden. 2 days before Sweden was up against, they had this election about taking the euro into Sweden, and Sweden was totally against it. So what did they do? They killed the Swedish foreign minister They stabbed her to death on 9/11. The date 9/11 is very important in all of these things. And they almost got Sweden to vote for the euro just out of sympathy for this victim's family and everything. All of it. They do it. This is why it's very important to see when these things are carried out and where, just like you say, because there's a lot of strange rituals and weird things going on. So you will see that on a repeated pattern. But when it comes to these mass shootings, if I can maybe not so in such a great detail as the other one, but go into a quick description of the template of like one of these bombings, because or mass shootings, because the thing with these are that they work from an old Roman template, and it's called problem, reaction, solution. You secretly create a problem to get the public to ask you to get the reaction from the public saying, oh my God, something needs to be done. And then you, who secretly created the problem, can come in with your solution. And
sounds like a Star Wars movie.
It's standard. This is an old Roman tactic. It's like standard, and we're still buying it. Now, like sometimes I'm asked to give an example, and if you look at, for instance, in South America, when they did military coups in the 70s and so on, what happened was that the states and other of these elite groups backed some militaries there to go in and overnight take over power. They went in, they killed the old president, they killed the government and everything like that. And very quickly they came into a position of power. But what the problem with that was, I mean, that was good for them in one way, but the problem was that when the sun came up the next morning and people suddenly discovered, oh my God, our country has been taken over by these military hooligans, you started having a massive problem with demonstrations, guerrillas, underground movements, all of these things against you. At the same time, also on an international basis, where other countries were starting, like, oh my God, we need to boycott this country, or we need to do this and this and this. So the people who took over these military groups, like Pinochet and other, what they had to mass arrest like thousands and thousands of people. They filled the jails. They tortured them to find out who was hiding and could become a future enemy and so on. They filled big football stadiums and things like that. And in the end, they almost had to have as many soldiers in the street as there was people in the population. Not the way to go, because this is a very clumsy and messy way. Instead, the clever way to go, and this is what they're doing on a regular basis, is that you secretly create a problem. This could be a mass shooting or a bomb, or let's say a bomb, for instance. So the thing is, with the mass shootings, you want them, the shooting, what they're trying to do is that the rifle, the weapons will be the problem, to get the reaction from people from these mass shootings saying, oh my God, something needs to be done. And then you will move in and say, give us all your weapons. It's the weapons that is the problem. They want to de-arm the population. That is the whole thing with these mass shootings. And this is why it's being carried out in more or less only the states, because that is the country where the population is armed. But when it comes to bombs, what you do there is, for instance, if you want in a, let's say, European country, you want the police to have total power, that they can walk around with a bazooka on their shoulder, have drones shoot people everywhere without warrants, that they can just kick in doors and do whatever they want, take people away, put them in prison without having the possibility for a lawyer or anything like that. If you just did that, for instance, if we say that I'm the one in power, if I just did that, I would have the same type of problem with the population. I would have demonstrations, I would have massive reactions, I would have boycotts and financial things from other countries and so on. So that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to secretly create a problem. Let's say this is a bomb, because they've used that quite a lot. I secretly position a bomb, and it's very important where I position it. It doesn't work with an old people's home or just an industrial area or something like that. No, it needs to be very central, so that very central, so that as many people as possible will feel that it could have been them. So it's placed in a subway or near. Also, one of the key factors as well as women and children to get the emotional reaction. That's the one they want. So it's always somewhere near a daycare center, children's hospital, or something like that. Women and children, that's the key one. So we go back to the other template as well. While I prepare the bomb, I also prepare a patsy. So this one is the one that will be blamed. I prepare all the evidence that will point that away. I also have, just like the other template, I have my own investigation on standby, ready to move in as soon as the bomb goes off. And like I said, also here is where they use this drill, that there's a drill going on, doing exactly the same as what will happen. You can see that in multiple places, like 7/7, 9/11, many of these places, there will be a drill. Anyway, so, and like I said, the reason for the drill, one of the reasons is to be able to get the explosives in position, to get the patsy who thinks that he's maybe part of a film take or whatever, but get him in position so that he can be blamed for it. Okay, so everything is set, and it's also important when the bomb should go off, because you need to do it when people are as most vulnerable as possible. So it will be early in the morning most of the time, around 9:15, something like that, when the most people are on their way to work or to drop off their kids and so on, and still not really awake, so they're very vulnerable. And then let's say here 9 o'clock, 9:10 or something like that, and you're boom, off we go. The bomb goes off, and right away media comes there and starts pumping out all these horrific images of blown up women and children and all of this, with the intention to get the reaction from the population saying, oh my God, something needs to be done. And then they turn towards me, who secretly created the problem, and say, my God, you need to do something about this. You need to do it. And then I say, well, I can do it, but to be able to deal with this vicious patsy that we have been prepared, I need to give the police total power. Let them have bazookas, let them have tanks in the street, have martial law, have all of these things. And then you pump it in, you kick the shit out of the patsy, you store them away. You become, who created this whole thing, is treated like a hero because I managed to get rid of this patsy. And then what I do afterward is not only do I manage to get all of this police power in position, but then I leave it there for a while. You will see that every single time it happens, these powers will be left in the streets, so that people get more and more used to see tanks in the streets, or people with, I mean, they look like Robocops nowadays, almost, with bulletproof vests and all of these. Leave them there for your protection. And then after a few weeks, when everything is done, then I withdraw them. But I leave about 20% of them. Like I said, once again, for your protection. Absolute bullshit. It's just to have more and more and more control. Take away the power or the liberties of the population, and just get more and more control. That's the name of the game.
That sounds about right. Although I think in the case of the states with these events, a big agenda is promoting mental health. I think they want to force people into psychiatric or other kind of health evaluations. And kind of like the old Soviet Union, if you don't agree with the official party line, that kind of is proof that you're crazy.
I totally agree. The attacks are coming from many, many different areas at the moment.
By the way, as an aside, We interviewed Catherine Austin Fitz not long ago, who is fairly well known in the alternative media world in the States. And she thought one of the big stories of the last year was if not the biggest story from a U.S. point of view domestically, was the failure of these attacks on guns to actually work. She's of the view, and I think this is probably the case, that most people basically feel that, how can I say it? A large number of people think these things are staged events, a very high percentage. But in addition, a large percentage of people feel that, well, the answer for crazy people having guns is to have more good people with guns. And, that argument may not work in Europe so well, but I don't think you're ever going to get rid of guns in the U.S., so it's just a question of how you respond to the problem. And anyway, she was of the view that the powers that be have basically failed with this campaign. And I'll give you a little aside. There was a shooting near Portland, Oregon, where it was stopped before it really happened by an off-duty security guard. And I think that was meant to have a certain number of deaths and so on and so forth. And they just really had, the powers that be had to go into cover-up mode because they didn't want to turn this guy into a hero, which was the first reaction locally, is you should put this security guard on the, the front page of the newspaper, hero saves many lives and that kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And instead, they had to go in cover-up mode. And I think after that, they really went hardcore with using actors instead of real events. I mean, after that, it's like every shooting happens on a government base or, you know what I mean? It's just full of actors. So I think they may be failing at what they're trying to do in the U.S.
I think they're failing big time. I think they're really, I'm super optimistic because I think it's cracking down around them. They were doing a good job for many years, and then once people started waking up more, they started speeding these things up because they thought, oh my God, we're losing control here, we're losing control. We need to get, especially in the States, we need to get hold of the weapons so that we can take over this country as soon as possible before enough people wake up. But they have failed. They have failed, and I think I'm absolutely not pro-violence in any way, but I would say that it would be a major, major mistake to give up the guns at this point. Because if you look at history, which I think it's really important to study history, not to do the same mistakes again, the people in power who have demanded population without weapons are people like Hitler, Mao, Stalin, and so on. And the result has been disastrous.
Well, also, the U.S. is basically an aggressive empire, too. It's not like we're talking about a small country like Fiji or something here. We're talking about a country that has nuclear bombs and God knows what kind of weapons in space and stuff. So there's that. How does it look in Europe? Does it look like this power elite is kind of running into problems, or do you think they're... What do you think?
I think they're into problems on a global scale. I mean, here in Europe, there's a lot around the Vatican part of the whole thing, with the pedophile networks being exposed and so on. I think when it comes to the violent part, it's most in the States at the moment, because that is where they're focused to, because that is the last major stop for them, I would say. If the States fall, the doors are open for the rest of the world. So this is where the focus should be at the moment, I think.
What about on the more geopolitical side? Do you see this as being the network that's kind of pushing for war in the Middle East, or possibly trying to blow up Ukraine and stuff like that?
I think most of it is connected as far as I've been able to see. I mean, I'm not an expert when it comes to many of these things, but as far as I can see, when you look at the networks, especially in the power pyramid, I go up to a level where I know there are levels above it, but where I've gone to the level I've been able to study, in great details. The major groups are the Bilderberg groups, the Trilateral Commission, and the Council on Foreign Relations. And when you see the members of these groups and how they interact and how they deal and how they go into different countries, just destroying one by one, if it's not financially, then in other ways, in this global overtake, one country after the other, also with the help of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. I think that most of these things are connected. It's the same agenda they're trying to carry out, and that agenda is to get global control, turn this whole place into one fascist state with one world army, one digital currency, one population with microchips, and also like turn us into a slave race where there's this small global elite that will be the rulers of the world, and the rest of us will be taking care of them. And also, what is not very nice is that it seems like they want to get rid of a lot of us as well. So, but like I say, I'm very, very optimistic, I must say.
Well, I am too. But your book is entitled "Coup d'État in Slow Motion."
Yeah.
And I thought that was the case 30 years ago, but now it's more like coup d'état in fast motion.
Fast forward.
Yeah, they're not so slow anymore, if you ask me.
Nope.
They're really pushing for it. I tell you what, Ulla, there's another topic that I wanted to get into, which is the sinking of the Estonia, because I think that is another kind of geopolitical event where it's got foreign, geostrategy, who's the secret side of big major weapons contracts and things. And so could you give us a little bit on that? I think it's a fascinating story.
I totally agree with you. A very tragic story as well. It was in September 1994, there was a ferry going from Estonia towards Sweden that officially ran into a storm with hard weather. And I don't know what you call that in English, the bow front. Is that can you call that? Do you know, like, it's like the upper part of a mouth that opens up when the cars drive into the ferry deck.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
I'm not sure about this. Yeah, but the bow, they say that the official story says that the bow was torn loose because of the heavy waves, and that water started coming in big time, making the whole ferry turn upside down and break, and not break, but then go under. What happened was that officially some 850 people drowned that night, and that was a tragic event. But once you start looking into what actually happened, there's a totally different story that appears that they've been trying to stop from day one. And this is once again like a multi-faceted story, but I can tell you some parts of it, and that was that there were very strange things happening right after. One of the things was that people were dying in the sea, waiting to be saved by helicopters and so on. But the helicopters were delayed due to the lack of fuel. There were technical problems and so on. So the rescue mission was very late. But they were flying in and out, and like I say, hundreds and hundreds of people died during the night. Then the people that were picked up out of the sea were picked up by some of the other ferries that was there. And what happened was that the helicopters came from Sweden with people in black suits, these type of people. And the survivors were put aside. They were not allowed to meet any of the other passengers. They were almost like in quarantine. They were not allowed to make any phone calls. They had to give up their national security numbers, all their details, all of this. And then they were put there, almost locked in on this ferry. Then when the ferry managed to come to Sweden, first of all, instead of taking care of all these people, they had gone through this awful experience, and they were so freezing cold and so on. They were left, the last one to leave the ferry. This was this group. The rest, all the cars, everybody else was taking off the ferry, and then they were transported in ambulances and so on to a hospital in Stockholm. In that hospital, same story again. They were not allowed to speak to anyone. They were not allowed to call their families. They were not allowed to do anything of this for quite a while. And in the beginning as well, there were lots of strange things happening with the list of passengers who died, because on some lists people were saved and survived and everything, and then suddenly after a few days they turned up dead. So for someone like myself, it was like, what is going on? Also, one of the first things what happened was that the Swedish Prime Minister, it was just the time of the election time in Sweden, so the Prime Ministers were just swapping place. And the old one was Ingvar Carlsson. He was a Council on Foreign Relations member, and the new one was Carl Bildt, who is a major Bilderberger, major one. Anyway, what they said to start with was, oh my God, what a catastrophe. We will do everything we can to get all the bodies out of the ferry. Because the thing is that it sank, it was only like 60 odd meters, so it's almost like an amateur diver could go down there and help with this type of work. But then something happened overnight, and the next morning they started, no, we're very sorry, but no, we cannot. And they started delaying these things. And in the end, it came to a point where they said, instead of us getting all of these bodies up so they can be buried and these families can get their loved ones home and so on, they said that we're gonna build like a concrete cemetery we're gonna build the whole ferry. I mean, we're talking about a massive ferry. We're gonna build the whole thing into like a concrete monument on the bottom of the sea to keep it safe from grave diggers, grave thieves and so on, which was very strange. And this is what, in the end, this never happened, but it's been going on for years and years and years and years, and no one has been allowed there. No, not the families have not been allowed there. They try to there's been military boats that have been circling the area. I think still to this day, after all of these years, there's still military boats circling around that area and so on. Also, they didn't want to give out the correct position where the ship had gone down. There were all of these strange things going. So once you start looking into it, what happened was that, like I say, it's multi-layered, so I'll give you the next layer. When the Soviet Union broke down and the Baltic states became free countries in the early 1990s, Estonia was one of them. And what happened was that there were quite a few submarine and nuclear army bases that had to be, what do you call it, dismantled, to sort of taken apart and so on. So Sweden sent over expert to help them. And also there was a colonel from the States. He was born in Estonia. His name was Alexander Einzel. He went over there and he became, I think, the chief of the army head in Estonia. So with these people, they started taking apart these nuclear submarine bases and so on. And at the night of this catastrophe, what happened was that the ferry was filled up with cars and passengers and everything, but it was delayed for some reason. And what witnesses saw was that after a while, the last vehicle that came on board was a military type looking truck with soldiers around it. And that came in and parked right next to the bow. There was also on this truck, there was a man in a red suit with a suitcase, and a small suitcase that was connected with a handcuff around his wrist. Anyway, this guy, he's always named as the man in the red suit. He was later seen with the captain of the boat once they took off. Anyway, so Estonia left harbor, and about an hour after she left, she was going towards Sweden. According to what witnesses have said, is that there was a series of explosions, that the whole ferry just shook like this, and people fell over and so on. And people saw the captain and also this man in the red suit. They looked a bit panicky, and then they ran up on to the bridge where where the captain is working. And a few minutes later, suddenly the ferry started going full speed ahead, really. And the sea was, at that time, the sea was getting quite heavy, so people were being thrown left, right, and center, and the boat was just going full speed ahead. And once you see afterward, what happened was that it left its normal route and it went a lot more south. I think in the end it came out some 15 miles off route. And there were some signals saying out, Mayday, Mayday, we're having serious problem, Mayday, Mayday, and then it just goes quiet. Anyway, like I say, what also didn't make sense was the way that the ferry, it sank very quickly, and that could not have happened if there had not been a hole somewhere in the body of the boat, of the ferry. If the water has just come in, like the official story said, what could have happened was that the ferry would have turned upside down. But there's such an amount of air enclosed in such a body that it would just have been lying there maybe for 2-3 days and so on before it would have gone down. But here instead, the water came in extremely fast. That is what witness says as well. And then it went down like very quickly, also drowning all of these people. So later it has been discovered that on one of the things that was on this truck, possibly a second truck as well, was a different type of weaponry from this submarine base and radioactive material. It's been said that there were some parts from a satellite mirror that was highly radioactive, and this is the reason why they've been trying to cover the whole thing up, to not expose that this ferry was actually part of like a route from the former Soviet Union through Sweden and down into to the rest of Europe with all of this illegal weaponry that was passed through Sweden and then sent all over the place in these super secret networks that we talked about, where Olof Palme was involved as well. So the reason they wanted to cover the whole boat was because of radioactivity, not because of this thing about people, grave robbers or whatever you want to say. But
do you think that this was an intentional? Somebody blew it up?
The thing is that there are films taken just within a month after this thing happened, where there were divers going down, and they filmed explosives that hadn't detonated on the side of the ship. In my book, I've got photos of these different explosives, and different experts, army experts and so on, they know exactly what type of explosive it is and the whole thing, but it's been totally denied in the official media. But it goes a lot, it's a lot bigger than this, because
deeper than that, yes.
Oh my God, yeah. So also there's this thing with these, there's 9 people, crew members that were first saved. One of the captains was even filmed when he left in an ambulance and so on. And then these 9 crew members suddenly disappears and comes up on the list of dead. And the families of these crew members have been, ever since that, been trying to find out what happened to them. And it seems like there were 2 private jets that was flown into Sweden, one American owned by a company that was very involved in the 9/11 event as well. and the other one owned by a Swedish billionaire. These two planes came in, and there was 4 crew members that was taken in one of them, and the other 5 in the other plane. And this one of the planes were paid for by the American embassy. I've got lots of details about this in the book as well. And then they were flown out to a destiny that it seems like they first went to Holland, and then I'm not sure what happened with them afterwards. There's a lot of rumors saying that these members that they knew too much about this thing, and for some reason they didn't take them out. I mean, that would have been the logic thing to do, just kill them, but apparently they located them on new locations somewhere, because some of the family members have received phone calls from at least 2 of them who called home just very quickly saying, I'm okay, and then put down the phone. So there's a lot of mystery around this. But then if you go back and you start looking upon it from a higher level, you find out that there was actually a drill going on. And the drill was exactly the same as what happened. This drill was... What a coincidence. And this drill was also connected with a 10-day naval exercise with more than 15 ships and a number of maritime aircraft were involved. This exercise included Belgium, Canada, Denmark, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, UK, the United States, and so on, including also Russia. And all of this was staged in the Skagerrak between Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, meaning that it's on the other side of Sweden, on the western side. This accident happened on the eastern, in the Baltic Sea. And this NATO naval exercise was called Exercise Cooperative Venture 94. It was overseen by the Supreme Allied Commander Atlantic, Admiral Paul D. Miller. And what we're talking about is there was more than 15 major big ships there, and there were lots of aircraft that could have gone in and helped to save all of these people. But instead, there was no interruption or no cooperation or nothing with these ships and so on, and these countries. There was just absolute silence. And what happened instead was that once the Mayday signal went out, the whole coastline of Estonia and all the other Baltic states were just blocked with a radio signal. It was just blocked until the ship went down. When the ship was down, poof, the blockage were open again, so that the radio traffic could start working again. So here we are. What the hell happened? We got the mock bomb exercise that was doing with exactly the same procedure as what actually happened, that there were bombs placed on board of this, that they were that it would sink. It sank more or less in the exact same position as in the drill. Also, there were some radio messages overheard where they were talking about, they were giving code names that were used in the drill, but they were using it in the real event as well. So it's like almost like the captain didn't know, is this a drill or isn't it, or what's going on, and so on. But I believe it goes even further than this, because I believe that the reason why she was sunk was that there was a group of local, like the investigation that was part of the assassination of Olof Palme. Do you remember we were talking about having your own investigation in? Here, sure. The same thing with the Olof Palme assassination. And that this investigation that was to certain parts filled with people that had absolutely no idea what actually happened, but with key people that was controlling the whole thing. The longer this continued, the more they found out about what actually happened. So suddenly you had about 70 people who started knowing too much. And like I said, the truth is the problem. So in other situations like this, they would have taken them out with car accidents, cancer, heart attacks, and so on, But when you suddenly have a group of 70 people, what do you do? How do you get rid of them without anyone noticing it? And this group, this very, very central group of policemen, were on this ferry this very day. They were sent over there having a conference on this boat and were on their way home when it went down. When you compare this to other of these big events as well, the only way they can get rid of such a big group of people is like on planes, or it has to be in a public place so that it's sort of disguised with a lot of different with other victims, so that it's not so obvious that this was the reason why this happened.
Hey, Ula, I have a story for you. I just read recently that in the latest bombing in Volgograd in Russia, that two of the victims were Russian rocket scientists who worked on classified stuff, and that the press there are trying to keep that under wraps and not talk about it much. But that possibly means that the thing actually had the goal of targeting them, and they just got everybody else to make it look like it was an Islamic terror attack.
This is standard procedure. Standard procedure.
Now, can't prove that, but it is in it is in the Russian news to some extent, apparently. So, but the point is, there have been lots of plane crashes where you think that 1 or 2 or 10 people were targeted, and the rest were just had a bad day. And so maybe that's the case here. But I would still think, though, if you've got 70 people, I mean, if you killed 5 of them, wouldn't that shut the rest of them up?
I tell you, sometimes they don't dare to take the risk, you know, because it only takes one to blow the whole thing off when it comes to people that are so central in a thing like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's certainly possible. So
can I just say, you know,
around with that. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
No, around the JFK assassination, when you look at the amount of people that died within the first 5-6 years around the JFK assassination, we're talking journalists, witness, people involved, police officers, and so on. They make calculations that the chance of them dying so early as they did is 1 in more than 1 trillion, you know. And when you look at all of these different plane crashes and these things around these big events, we're talking about the same. It's just the odds are so out of balance. You know, so I would say, I don't know about this Volgograd bombing. I have absolutely no idea. But what I could do, I could go in and describe how they would carry it out if it would be a conspiracy. And if that fits in, then I would say for sure at least have a closer look at it. You know, because they follow the same thing again and again.
Right. But in the case of this Estonia sinking, has anything come out since then that's particularly interesting?
I mean, in my book, there's about this naval exercise. As far as I know, I'm one of the very few people that have known about that at all. This is not general knowledge at all. And it's also like when you see how the planes, like I said, the plane was, it is the ownership of that plane is connected to some of the companies that was deeply involved in the 9/11 as well, where one of the owners was a man by the name of Hank Greenberg, who is extremely connected in this whole thing. He's a former chairman and director of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. He was nominated to be director of the CIA, frequent attendee of the Bilderberg meetings, former director, New York Stock Exchange, chairman, Star Foundation, and so on. Do you know, these are not like beginners, these people, and that pops up like this. So they all are indirectly or directly connected, because we get back to the same group of people on every single time, as far as I'm concerned. I'm really doubting that there is such a thing as a real terrorist, almost, because every single time when I look into this, and I'm saying this after 30 years of deep digging into these things, every single time the people who carry them out are either trained, funded, sponsored by, or well, directly connected to them again.
Well, I thought these books like 1984 are textbooks, right? They're not they're not fiction.
No, but that was an insider who, George Orwell was one of the insiders who wrote about these things.
Of course, but I'm just talking about in that the terrorism is basically fake. I mean, the whole thing is an
You need a
operation.
you need a boogeyman. You need a boogeyman to be able to get people to accept these things.
And in the case of bin Laden, most people think he was dead for, pretty much around the time of 9/11.
He
So
died
all of the
shortly after.
that's what a lot of people say. And then we get different videos of him. There's the fat bin Laden. There's the younger bin Laden. You know what I mean? They don't even bother to spiff up the video and make him look, the right age.
But
Uh,
I tell you, can I just say that in Sweden, when I was digging into this thing with Olof Palme for so many years, I met people from the Secret Service, the secret police and so on. And first I got scared, because I thought, oh my God. And then when I started talking to them more and more, it was just like they were so childish, many of them, like almost like cowboys and Indians. You know, they were living like in a dream world of they had very little contact with normal life and so on, and they were so into these spy games and these different operations and so on, but on a very childish level. So I don't know if I just lost a lot of respect for them, as because I always thought, my God, they must be super intelligent and super skilled and super. That was absolutely not the impression I got from the real people I met.
well, it's speculation, but a lot of people argue that in the West, there are kind of different types of, what shall we say, internal police and spy groups, and that some of them are intentionally filled with, naive or incompetent or whatever, people who can't possibly succeed because of the rules they're working under. And that's to make it so this deeper, darker group behind the scenes can get away with their stuff, right? I mean, if you only hire young kids who are fanatically patriotic and at the same time naive or whatever, you know what I mean? It's
Mm.
easier to control them. And in the case of the U.S., I think they really do. Essentially, I don't know how you want to say it, but they have good guys in the sense they're doing their jobs technically correct in something like the CIA in analysis, but
Mm.
it doesn't affect what the CIA actually does because
No?
they don't have the power. It's the operational branch that has the real power. And
Yeah.
so if you talk to somebody who works for the CIA, you might have a totally distorted view, I think, of the evil they're up to, because you might think, this is a totally competent guy who cares about the country. And it just doesn't work that way because they're compartmentalized.
I totally agree with you, but it's like when you look at people in Operation 40, these assassins, they see themselves as freedom fighters, and we see them as terrorists. It's all a matter of what side of the fence you are on. During the Second World War, when they tried to kill Hitler, were the people trying to kill Hitler, were they heroes or were they terrorists? You know, the history says that they were heroes because Hitler was a bad guy, but had it been the other way around, it's it's so confusing. I think when you look at it, it's very hard to point blaming at anyone because most people do what they believe in are the right thing to do. But it's when you see on a global scale and what it's doing to the rest of the world, then you really need to make a stand and saying it is absolutely not okay what is going on.
Oh, I totally agree with you. We need to stop this. And we're at risk of starting World War III, too. This trying to rearrange the Middle East or, essentially conquer Russia, this kind of stuff is very dangerous. But you were optimistic a few minutes ago, and I think there is still reason to be optimistic. The rest of the world is developing a lot, and the game is becoming obvious. You know, they set all these things up, these color revolutions and these Arab Springs and all kinds of things, but I don't know if it's working as well.
No.
I think they're failing in some senses, and I think that's the danger, though, is they're panicking and they're going faster and faster, and perhaps will do radical stuff. A lot of us thought, for example, the current destabilization in the Ukraine, we thought they were going to do it around the election, but they decided to speed it up, and they're just in such a hurry now. Which is an interesting question. Why are they in such a hurry?
Because we're waking up. They can't get away with it anymore. That is the whole thing, and that is one of the beautiful things as well, is that so many people are becoming aware of that these powers have been able to get away with the things that they have for so many years just because they've been working in the shade, in the shadows, that people have not been aware. And now it's like there's this suddenly a spotlight on them saying, my God, we see you, we see you. So I really think they're freaking out. They're losing control big time. And because of this, speeding it up, and yes, like you say, then there is a risk for them doing drastic, stupid things, really stupid things. But we can only pray and hope that that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. And speaking of this, I think this would be a good chance to remind people that you have a website and that people can support your work because the kind of stuff you're doing is important. So your website is lightonconspiracies.com, right?
Yep.
And then you have this book, Coup d'etat in Slow Motion. And then I guess you also have like perhaps a page for donations and things like that. So we would recommend listeners check out your website. There are a lot of interviews and things there. And then if they can help you, that would be good too. Are there any other things you have besides the book? You are working on like movies, any other kinds of DVDs, any things you're working on?
Yeah, I'm working on many different projects, but at the time, there's such a need of this truth getting out there. So, like I say, I'm focusing extremely much on getting as much truth as I can present as possible out there. So, like you say, any kind of donations and so on is greatly appreciated because it's a very hard situation to feed your family and at the same time focus on these things because they're so time consuming. So also I have a newsletter, a monthly newsletter that if anyone subscribed, that will also be part of supporting my research and so on. So once again, very, very appreciated. Now, I've got other books as well. But like I say, one of the things that I really would like to, as a next step, would be to make a very high quality documentary following this Operation 40 from the early 1960s and all the way up until today, connecting all of these big events that have shaped this world in such a distorted place instead of this beautiful harmonious play it was supposed to be. Now it's like there's this bully in the schoolyard just terrorizing the whole neighborhood. But I just want to say it's an absolute joke when you think of it, because like this group that we're talking about is maybe a few thousand, and we're 7 billion people. So that for us to let us be controlled by them just because they have a lot of money, it's absolutely ridiculous when you think of it. So it's a very exciting time, I think, to be alive, a very challenging time, and a time to see that it's actually happening now. It's not a time to sit and poke your nose and watch another football game. This is a time to wake up and see what's going on and also empower yourself. They're trying to control us with fear, to press us down, to push us down so that our energy goes very low. That is where they control us, can control us the most. So one way I think that is very efficient of strengthening yourself is to at all times try and raise your energy inside, by gratitude and to really be happy for what you have, by helping others, supporting others, instead of focusing on your own problems. When you start and you reach out a hand, when you help other people, that makes you feel better and stronger. It's other people that you help get stronger. People who see you do it, they get happier and stronger. And it's sort of like circles on the water, just spreading. Because this is, if you go into these conspiracies and you go into it and you get depressed, which is very easy to get depressed and scared and go into a panic mode, you're doing no good at all. This is not a time for that. It's a time to go in there, but to turn the light on. Go into these dark corners, but turn the light on and live by examples for other people. See that, not spread fear, not spread depression and death and destruction around you, because when you get into this conspiracy world, that is a very normal way to do that. It just becomes so overwhelming and people cannot bear listening to you. So my suggestion would be to to spread the light, to lift it at all possible times.
Well, Ula, my suggestion is, I don't know, listen to more upbeat classical music or Indian classical music or something. Because, like Professor Emoto in Japan with his work on crystal water and sounds.
Yes, for sure. I love him.
Right. I mean, if you just the energy, the vibrations behind positive, uplifting things is so good. And then the damage from the bad stuff. And that's why you have to stay away from, I don't know, like some of this TV news that's all about fear and death and destruction and who got killed today and all that. It's not just to distract you. It's to lower your vibrational level, really.
It's done on purpose, big time. That I haven't watched TV news for 10, 15 years or something like that. I stay away from it. I inform myself through other sources, but I stay away from these because it's so pointed at pushing you down. And like I say, just like you say with Masuro Emoto, he has shown and proved the importance of this vibration, with the water crystals in your body and everything, to just lift it. That's where you get the power from, when you lift yourself through that. And that is through positive thinking, through the love vibration, the high vibration, and so on. And that will affect people around you as well and make you a lot more difficult to control from them. So it's not just new age woo talk. This is real hardcore science, I would say. So that's what I try to do, also to become, because if I'm low and depressed, I do no good at all for the world. But if I can stay strong and positive and help to lift this whole load from all of us, then that's part of my journey.
Well, Ula, you're doing a great job. We need more optimistic, upbeat conspiracy researchers.
Thank you so much.
No,
I'm
you
doing
are.
my best.
You're doing a great job. So I tell you what, why don't we wrap it up there? We appreciate you coming very much. Once again, your website is lightonconspiracies.com, and I recommend it highly. And I guess that'll do it for this time. So thanks much for coming.
Listen, can I finish with a small little prayer?
Sure can.
Because I normally do. Because the thing is, for this to stop, the way to do it is not by violence. You cannot fight these powers or these people with violence, because they're so much stronger when it comes in this area. That is not the way to do it. The way to do it is just like the Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King way. The non-violence and also by the solution is for them to wake up, for them to get out of this dark place that they're in, get out of the greed and all of these awful rituals and whatever it is. In my opinion, that's the only way we can stop this. So I have a very beautiful yoga teacher who normally finish with this prayer, and it goes like this: May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May everyone, and especially the ones who hurt us, be filled with peace and joy, love and light. Victory to that light. And that is what I strongly feel as well.
Well, that's beautiful. Appreciate it. Okay. Well, I tell you what, on that, we'll close. And we thank you so much for coming. And we wish you the best in all of your endeavors.
Thank you so much. The same to you.
Okay. Take care. It's a wrap, folks. Till next time.